George Kilpatrick, inspiration for the nation. We are here with Dr. Ofrona Reid. He is the Chief Medical Officer of Syracuse Community Health. And it's Heart Healthy Month, Doc. What are some things we need to know to keep our heart healthy?
Well, some of the things we got to know to keep the health healthy is understanding what causes it, risk factors of cardiovascular disease. One is high cholesterol, diabetes, hypertension, tobacco, and a sedentary lifestyle. So, number one, we have to get up and move. And when I say get up and move, I don't mean go join the gym. Some people don't have the funds to do so, but I mean like getting up, walking 15 minutes away from your house, 15 minutes back, just 30 minutes. The goal is to kind of try to reach an hour a day of getting up and moving outside your normal activities. That's number one. Number two is a low cholesterol diet. Number three is how to prevent suffering from diabetes. And then number four is going to be tobacco cessation if you smoke.
Yeah, that's really important. And I know you went through that pretty quickly, but I think for many of us, these are, there are embedded lifestyle choices that we've made that we grew up with. And it's hard to break some of those choices. I'm sure you see that with some of the patients that you are seeing at the health center, right? That we come with generations of tradition, and some of those traditions are not heart healthy, like fried foods, for example, or other heavy sweets and things of that nature aren't good factors for heart healthy choices.
Agreed. So I think starting off with hypertension and low sodium intake, we know that the average U.S. person should not have more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day, and we know that 1 teaspoon is 2,000 milligrams of sodium. So a lot of times people sprinkle salt on their food, not realizing that they probably have overdone it, and that causes sodium retention, which means sodium keeps water in the body, and blood pressure goes up. That leads to cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, as well as heart failure.
It's interesting because my daughter, she likes to get a certain sandwich from a certain place, one of these fast food places. And she said, afterwards, can you feel, she said, I feel like I have to drink water because I can feel the amount of salt that I've taken into my body. Can you tell immediately that you've consumed too much sodium after eating something? Is there an immediate impact on your body?
Definitely, you can feel. Sometimes patients who actually have, like, let's say Chinese food, after they finish eating it, they get thirsty because all that sodium intake, sodium actually binds to the water. And so it's pretty much, binds to the water, which makes you use the bathroom, but you feel thirsty. Some people actually get swelling of the hands. They feel like their hands are tight from sodium retention. So yes, you can.
You can tell. And they have a menu that says you can do this and do that if you're ordering takeout of that nature. But a lot of times, let's talk, staying on sodium, what's the impact of not regulating your sodium intake aside from hypertension? Let's go all the way down the road with that.
Right. So I think the impact is that you have sodium retention leads to hypertension. Hypertension can lead to a stroke, heart attack, kidney failure, and heart failure. Now, heart failure is this. Heart failure is when the outside of the heart gets big and inside gets small, and all the sodium water you retain can't keep up, so it backs up into the lungs. And it causes heart failure. Sometimes you'll see people who have swelling of the lower legs, swollen. That's all backup of fluid because the heart can't keep up because too much sodium retention from someone with a heart failure.
And also could lead to kidney failure.
Yes. So what happens in that situation is when you have sodium retention, high blood pressure for a long period of time, hypertension can cause constriction of the arteries in the kidneys, decrease in blood flow, and that can also affect the kidneys.
You're talking about, I don't know if you know this, and we haven't talked about this ahead of time, but I'm thinking about the player for Buffalo, Damar Hamlin, whose heart stopped on the field. What do you know about that, if anything?
Yeah, I don't really know much about it. I know that during the game, he actually had a syncopal episode where he passed out and he had some type of cardiac arrhythmia. And at one point, what we call asystole, his heart stopped, was a flat line. And they had used devices there to actually fibrillate his heart again. So I know that there's cardiovascular there's hypertension can cause arrhythmias as well as cardiovascular disease, can cause arrhythmias too, but I'm not sure exactly the details of his situation.
Right. No, I just thought of that because of the miracle recovery that he's experienced, and how he is actually become. I believe he's working with the American Heart Association to bring awareness to cardiovascular health, which is what February is, which is why we're talking to Dr. Ofrona Reid, who's the Chief Medical Officer at the Syracuse Community Health, about making heart healthy choices. I'm concerned, particularly in our community, I'm just going to say the Black community, my community, if you will, about making sure that we get this information, because when you look at the data, it seems like we're adversely impacted in every one of those categories that you talked about, whether it's hypertension, whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's stroke. It seems like we're well represented on the other side of that. So why is this important for us right now?
It's important because I think it's, as you know, the prevalence of hypertension in Black men is 58%, which is considered high. If you look at the prevalence of diabetes in Blacks, it's 10%. I mean, the Native Americans is 14.6%, but we're actually 10%. So it's pretty second highest. If you look at cardiovascular disease in the African American patient population, we're actually pretty high compared to other ethnicities. So I think it's important for us to understand what does all this mean. Well, when we say cardiovascular disease, we're talking about such as like hypertension, high cholesterol, which I mentioned, obesity, diabetes. And the thing about diabetes is that, I don't know when you were younger, but when I was younger, we was kind of poor, so we couldn't afford Kool-Aid, so we used to drink sugar water. And so we would get some water and put sugar in it, and the more sugar you put, the thicker it would get. I tell patients all the time, if you're diabetic, you're non-diabetic, and you're putting all the sugar, you're drinking all the soda and juice, all you do is putting sugar into your blood, you're making it so thick that can lead to a heart attack. Someone who has a cholesterol problem, and that means that you have good cholesterol and you have bad cholesterol. The LDL cholesterol is the bad cholesterol. The HDL is good cholesterol. The LDL cholesterol, why we call it the bad cholesterol? Because it's very sticky, very sticky. And it binds to the arteries in the heart, the brain, and also in the kidneys, leading to those problems that we mentioned earlier.
So one of the things that we could do is eat healthier. So what foods should we avoid to make heart healthier choices?
I think that we got to do everything in moderation. I think you should avoid too many fried foods. You got to think about things like cheese and sweets, like too much soda and cake, things of that nature. I think that we all can have these things in moderation, but we really got to be careful of overindulging in it. And I know that in our community, people can't really afford healthy food, so they may go to the store and pick up a bag of chips and a soda. That's just the way it really is. But if you think about it, that's not really a true healthy meal. And so I think eating healthy, of making wise choices, and having access to produce and things of those natures and fruits would be the best way to go. I think as an organization, our goal is to try to collaborate with places in the community, such as the Brady Market, to allow some type of stipend or some type of voucher where they can actually get healthy food.
Mm-hmm. That's really important. All right, so what do you eat and what do you tell your patients to eat?
Right. So I eat, I try to have a balanced meal. The recommended dose for fruit is usually 2 cups a day. The average American person has like 1.5 cups a day. Actually, less than 1. Vegetables is 1.5, but the recommended dose is 3 cups a day. So I try to have my fruits, balanced fruits and vegetables, drink a lot of water. I don't really drink soda at all. Very rare I drink soda. I try to make healthy choices. Sometimes when I go out to eat, I have a choice. I can choose a healthy menu, healthy order. I can choose a non-healthy order. So I really try to be intentional about what I eat and what comes into me. I do also try to move around a lot, and those 15 minutes away, 15 minutes back, and really get myself going, which helps me keep my weight down, of course.
And what do you tell your patients? Same thing?
Tell my patients the same thing. I think I got to be realistic. I got to understand what they can do and what they can't do. So my expectations got to understand that the patient may not be able to do what I can do. So I first learn, okay, what can you do and what do you do? And I try to help them in that way, as far as, okay, well, choose, instead of buying chips and soda, let's do the math. How much does that cost you? All right. Instead, could you have, bought this instead? Because we know how much tomatoes cost. We know how much cucumbers cost. Sometimes it's really letting them see that you just paid $20 for this, but you could spend $20 on this is healthier. And I think educating them about how to spend their money, it has been rewarding because some patients actually do. It's like a rude awakening to them. Like, well, I didn't think about it that way. You spend $20 on this. Guess what? This costs that. So.
And there's some other things that people can do for heart health. For example.
Example would be, I guess, again, I spoke exercise, diet, and weight loss. We know that patients who do all three of those things decrease their cardiovascular risk, death, and disability.
What about smoking cessation?
Smoking cessation is especially a big one for me because we know one of the greatest risk factors of cardiovascular disease is actually tobacco use, smoking, cigarettes. And that's the leading preventable disease, such as disability, death, and disease, smoking. So you stop smoking, we know that after 15 years, your lungs will look similar to someone who didn't smoke. So because it's a significant risk factor for cardiovascular disease, that's something that I really stress to my patients of trying to figure out how do I help them to stop, smoking. Now, understand a lot of people who go through stress, anxiety, depression, they usually turn to cigarettes to help cope. And we know that anxiety, depression, are risk factors for poor outcomes for cardiovascular healing.
And family history, right? That also plays a factor.
Oh, definitely. Family history, especially so if a man has a heart attack before the age of 55 or a female before 65, that's called premature coronary artery disease. That's usually somehow congenital, either mother or father had it young. That's definitely a risk factor.
And I was just thinking about all of those things in terms of how we make better choices as a community, especially since these factors impact Black communities in a significantly higher rate.
Definitely. Because you look at cardiovascular disease, we know that 14.6% of patients who are American Indian, and then 10% are actually Black. And I mentioned before earlier regarding the prevalence of hypertension in the Black community, Black men are 58%. And diabetes, you can see that the African Americans are also high. Now, the Native Americans are actually higher when it comes to diabetes prevalence than the African Americans, but we're second.
And prediabetes is also something that we got to look at.
Definitely. So prediabetes is, what we do is that when we do check for someone who has diabetes, we order something called a hemoglobin A1C. What that means is that our red blood cells in our body also binds to glucose, which is we call it sugar. And we measure that indirectly, hemoglobin A1C. Now, the normal range is less than 5.7. So 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes. 6.5 and greater is diabetes. So what we see now, we see an increase in pre-diabetes because now we're screening.
And sleep. Let's talk about the impact of sleep and not getting enough of that and how that might influence your cardiovascular health.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have problems, issues with sleep, especially sleep deprivation, it affects your body. It affects the catecholamines in your body. Catecholamines affects the blood vessels in your body, which causes high blood pressure. So sleep can cause delirium, mental stress, mental depression, because when your body doesn't feel rested, what do you feel? You feel depressed, you feel down, irritable. That leads to elevated blood pressure. Elevated blood pressure for long periods of time leads to other problems such as heart disease, kidney disease, stroke.
Anything else we need to know about cardiovascular health?
No, I just think it's very, very important to make better decisions when you're spending your money. You got to make sure you add up what you're buying and cannot buy something even the same amount, but healthier.
Yeah. And you have nutritionists on staff that can help patients there look at that.
Yes, we have nutritionists, and all our patients who have diabetes, cholesterol, and hypertension are referred to her, and she does an excellent job with them.
All right. Dr. Ofrona Reid, Chief Medical Officer at Syracuse Community Health, and they're a partner with Inspiration for the Nation. So glad to have you on the program to talk about being heart healthy.
Thanks for having me.
Inspiration for the Nation.